tonight I want to start with the big images that have dominated what's been happening in the landscape across North India right through this monsoon period. 2025 will go down in history as arguably a year when North India has faced its worst ever flooding in decades. From Punjab to Uttarakhand to Himachal to Jammu and Kashmir to Delhi NCR, large parts of North India have witnessed rains like never before. Hillsides have turned into rivers of mud, plains into vast inland lakes. It is as if nature's fury has come to strike large parts of North India. A large part of this also, according to some specialists, is man-made. Others are suggesting it's purely climate change. All of this will be discussed in detail at the top of the show today. Also, whether urban infrastructure is capable of handling this level of flooding. But all of this starts with the state of Punjab, a state which is witnessing what it last did in 1988. Rivers, Ravi, Sutlej, Beas, all overflowing. Thousands of villages have been inundated. The question is, Punjab's rivers are now turning into rivers of sorrow. Why? Take a look at our top story.
Over 2.56 lakh people impacted. More than 15,000 evacuated. .32 lakh acres of farmland submerged. Punjab is suffering its worst floods in nearly 4 decades. Cities and villages are equally hit. Gurdaspur, Amritsar, Firozpur, Fazilka, Pathankot, Kapurthala and Hoshiarpur are the worst affected districts. In this village of Firozpur, a school has been converted into a relief shelter.
पानी हैगा 6-7-8 फुट बड़ा हाल मंदा है आज सानू 8 दे हो गया 9 दे हो गया आया नु
Another village nearby is cut off, with the road linking it going underwater. Residents say they got no help for last 4 days. On Tuesday, the authorities were busy making arrangements for Chief Minister Bhagwant Man's visit. Governor Gulab Chand Kataria too visited relief centers.
प्रशासन की तरफ से कोई मदद नहीं मिली है हमारे गांव की 100-200 एकड़ जो जमीन है वो टोटल ही बर्बाद हो चुकी है जो धान लगा हुआ है जो पशुओं का हरा चारा है वो सारा पानी में खराब हो चुका है हमें जेल में एक हिसाब से जेल में बंद कर दिया गया है
What stands out is the initiative of citizens. Common man and celebrities both standing up to serve. Vehicles taking food to flood-hit areas are hard to miss. Organizations are setting up relief camps and providing medical help.
ਉਹ ਲੋਕ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੜਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਸਾਧਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਵਿਚਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੈਰ ਗਲੇ ਨੇ ਖਾਰਸ਼ਾ ਫੰਗਲਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਮੈਡੀਸਨ ਦੇਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਆਏ ਹਾਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਲੋਕ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ
The crisis is making people wonder if it was a man-made one.
It's a man-made disaster और कोई कारण नहीं है कि भी ईयर आफ्टर ईयर और लेट्स से एवरी 2 years पंजाब में इस तरीके का फ्लड्स आएँ और इतनी डिवेस्टेशन हो इसका मतलब साफ है कि भाई वी हैव नॉट बीन बॉदर्ड अबाउट कि भाई फ्लड्स के कंट्रोल या फ्लड्स के अर्ली वार्निंग से लेकर पूरा जो सिस्टम लेआउट होना चाहिए था वो हमने कोई गौर नहीं किया
The Met Department has issued red alert in many areas. The worst may not be over yet for Punjab. With Aman Bhardwaj, Kamaljeet Sandhu and Navjot Randhawa. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let me go across straight to India's leading activist when it comes to environmental issues. Sunita Narayan, editor of Down to Earth, joins me. Sunita, appreciate you joining us. You've been among those who've been screaming from the rooftops year after year, saying that we are heading for a climate emergency. Is there something different that you've noticed this time, just the sheer spread of the nature of the floods across every state of North India?
Absolutely, Rajdeep. This year is devastating. It is catastrophic. And the point is, and that's what we have to understand, that this is about climate change, but this is also not about climate change. Because what we have to understand is that there is so much that we are doing wrong with the way we are doing development, whether it is the fact that we are destroying drainage in Punjab, or that we are building like no tomorrow in the Himalayas, which means that the mountains are more and more vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you're getting intense, frequent, extreme weather events, and that is linked to climate change. So you have to understand, we're sitting on a precipice, and then you get this extreme weather events, mm-hmm. and that's what's driving this massive human tragedy that we are seeing unfolding in front of our eyes. These floods are not about water, they're about the devastation of people's lives, homes, property, development assets, roads, highways, everything getting destroyed.
You know, let's break what you said into the two parts. I want to start with the man-made nature of this tragedy. We've seen this in Himachal Pradesh, encroachments right on the hillsides on the Himalayas. We've seen it in Wayanad last year, where there was this terrible devastation that took place again with landslides. And we've seen it this year again in Punjab, this time encroachments along the floodplains, poor maintenance of embankments, clogged drains in our cities. So are you saying that part of this is man-made and part of it is just is the nature of what climate change is doing to weather patterns?
See, Rajdeep, climate change is a reality. Let's be absolutely sure about that. If you look at this year itself, you are seeing from all government data, you are seeing something very unusual that has happened this year, which is increased frequency of western disturbances during the monsoon period. We always had western disturbances, but not of the number that we are seeing this year. Now, what that is doing is that you have an active monsoon, you get the western disturbance, you get this collision happening, and then you get this massive rainfall. You're also getting our own data. We have been tracking the cloud bursts. Just in the last 2 months, you have got as many as 21 cloudburst instances over the 2-3 Himalayan states. Now, just think about that. That intense frequency and intensity is climate change. When I talk about the western disturbance, Rajdeep, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. It's happening because it is linked to a global phenomena, which is the Arctic jet stream, which is the western disturbances are winds that come from the Mediterranean all the way to India. The weakening of the Arctic jet stream because of climate change means that these systems are getting more and more erratic. And that is linked to climate change. So this is not something you and I can do anything about today. We need to fight it. But clearly we are not cutting emissions at the scale that we can turn this around. But what is adding to it and what is exacerbating this is the fact that we are doing development so badly, Rajdeep. We have to understand that this is going to happen. So if you look at the flooding in Gurugram, it's not because Gurugram has got excess rain only. It's also because every drainage system has been deliberately, willfully destroyed. We have not planned for the rains. Now you can argue you can never plan for this quantity of rains, but we have to start planning and executing. We're doing everything wrong. We are clearing roads in the Himalayas. We are building more and more.
No, my worry, sorry to stop you for a moment. My worry, Sunita, is that all of this that you're saying, you've said before, experts like you have been banging your heads on the door saying, for God's sake, wake up and smell the rain, if I may use that word. But the truth of the matter is, there is very little happening on the ground. Punjab this time has been completely caught in a way unawares, you could argue, but we've seen that in other states as well. Himachal Pradesh is a disaster now every year. So is Uttarakhand. Last year it was Kerala. I mean, everyone knows the problem. You cannot have encroachments on eco-sensitive areas, on hillsides, on floodplains. It's all known. But do you see anyone moving for a national plan at all?
Rajdeep, I think, frankly, I've stopped going on television for this reason, saying, what can you keep repeating? You know that this is happening. The fact is, we have climate change, but that we can do nothing about, but at least you can start accepting the fact that every year extreme weather events are going to increase. You have to accept the fact the Himalayas are the world's youngest mountain range. They are the most vulnerable. You have to start planning for it. Our forecasting systems are down. We do not have enough good forecasting systems. Preparedness has to be improved. Drainage has to be improved. And we cannot build in floodplains, allow encroachment at the scale. Rajdeep, I'm only sharing with you my anguish once again, my sense of frustration to say we have to understand something is changing in our world, and each year it will get worse. You are seeing it. You and I each year are seeing it happen.
Do you believe though that the planning, Sunita, do you believe the planning must be at the state level or the center? Because we've seen part of the problem is that there is absolutely no coordination between the center and states on these critical issues. Now, is decentralization the way forward, making states and even further down districts responsible in a way for this kind of planning? Because the truth of the matter is corruption. A lot of these encroachments, let's be honest, is plain and simple corruption, a brazen violation of all regulations. So it's not more laws, it's implementation. And who does that, center or states?
No, it has to be the state, but Rajdeep, I think we have to go beyond words now. I'm so tired of all these fancy conferences, meetings, discussions on adaptation, resilience, talking about planning for the Himalayas. We have just cleared in principle the Char Dham road across the most vulnerable part of the Himalayas, where deodar trees are going to be cut. Across Dehradun, I'm getting plea after plea from people saying we are cutting more and more trees. Now, roads are needed. Communication is needed. But surely we need to plan better. We need to keep understanding that these are vulnerable regions. This has to be the onus of the state. The state has to understand with each flood, every development dividend is being lost. Today, Rajdeep, the situation is we are building roads and the roads are getting wiped away with every flood, every landslide. We have to understand that this is revenge of nature, and nature is telling us that this is going to get worse every year. And we have to start, as you said, smell the rain. We have to start understanding that this is not going to get better unless we make it better. Whether it's done at the center or state, I don't know. I only know that it's beyond words and conferences and fancy documents. We need it translated on the ground. It's a human tragedy.
Sunita Narayan, strong words from you, and I appreciate you joining us. Always good to have you on TV. These are the voices that we need to hear, and hopefully those in power are listening. Enough of your summits in air-conditioned hotels in the national capital. Go to the ground and make sure there is implementation of the laws that are put in place, particularly in the eco-sensitive zones of this country. Sunita Narayan joining me on the climate emergency. Thank you very much for joining me here at the top of the news today. Now, I want to turn from there to a city which really represents all that's gone wrong. It's branded as the Millennium City, the city with the highest net worth individuals in the country per square kilometer. But every year, year after year, in Gurugram, in the national capital region, the situation is getting worse. Even the slightest amount of rainfall leads to waterlogged streets, large traffic jams, and a complete civic collapse. Let's take a look at just why Gurugram should now be renamed not the Millennium City, but the crumbling city. Take a look.
Gurugram needs no introduction, but we still give it one. The Millennium City is where every time it rains, streets resemble rivers or drains, depending on which area you happen to be in. Where you will see widening income inequality, but also see it leveling out when it rains. Billionaire or not, no one can escape waterlogging here. This was a common sight on Monday, people rolling up trousers and walking in knee-deep water. The Millennium City is where long traffic jams like the one seen Monday night, though distressing, are never surprising. The administration, as expected, got down to the business after Monday's heavy downpour. They advised the corporates to keep workers at home on Tuesday if possible. They advised schools to keep children at home for online classes. The remaining stepped out Tuesday morning, wondering what the day would be like.
What you see is that knee-deep water, and we have also seen the drainage system collapsing to the extent that water was actually outflowing from the drainage which is supposed to drain out the water from these roads. On the right-hand side is the bus stand road, which is again in knee-deep water. The local MLA Mukesh Sharma's office is in fact located on that particular lane itself, and that is also inundated.
बहुत बुरा हाल है सड़कों का, लेकिन पुलिस बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है. पुलिस इतना अच्छा काम कर रही है, मैंने देखा आधी सड़कों पे खड़े हुए हैं लोग बाग और भीग रहे हैं बारिश में, और गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट कुछ एक डिपार्टमेंट्स बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं.
बिहार में मेरा ऑफिस है, तो कल मेरे को करीब 4 घंटे लगे थे वहाँ से, जब मैं 5 बजे निकला था. तो आज हमने सोचा थोड़ा जल्दी चलते हैं. जल्दी आने पर भी अभी ऑटो यहाँ पे खराब हो गया मेरा, और अब मैं सोच रहा हूँ मैं घर कैसे जाऊँ.
Why does Gurugram get flooded? Experts say unplanned urban growth is the primary factor. Rapid urbanization has turned farmland and natural drainage areas into concrete buildings. Natural water channels like Najafgarh Drain, Ghata Jheel, Badshahpur Drain that once carried excess rainwater have been encroached upon or have narrowed. Gurugram lacks an integrated stormwater drainage system. The city mostly relies on surface drains, which get clogged with plastic, silt, and construction debris. Many drains are interconnected with sewage lines. During heavy rains, both overflow. Add to all of this the lack of coordination between multiple authorities like Huda, Municipal Corporation, NHAI, and private developers. The recipe for chaos is complete. Every year, real estate records are broken in Gurugram. Just a few months ago, a penthouse in the city was sold for 190 crore rupees. The deal made newspaper headlines. The city, which is home to billionaires, IT companies and auto firms, accounts for over 60% income tax generated from the state. But all that money seems just not enough to get the city proper drainage. With Amit Bharadwaj, Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, let's put the big questions. Gurugram drowning. Why is India's urban infra crumbling? One year Bengaluru, next year Gurugram, the so-called Millennium Cities. Can we make metros monsoon-proof? Can someone pay attention to drainage? Is this a climate emergency or a man-made crisis? Let me go to our guest now. We are joined by Arunabha Ghosh. He joins us at the moment. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Arunabha Ghosh there. I'm also joined at this moment. Arunabha is founder, CEO, Council on Energy, Environment and Water, and by Vivek Menon, urban planner. Appreciate both of you joining us. Arunabha, to you first. I mean, are we surprised by what we've seen, or is it simply getting worse every year? The complete lack of planning has led to the collapse of Gurugram, and now it's too late.
We shouldn't be surprised by what we are seeing, because this is. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Rajdeep. We shouldn't be surprised by what we're seeing, because it's a combination of a worsening monsoonal pattern combined with, which is compounded rather by poor urban planning. See, across country, we have 4,500 odd tehsils. 64% of those tehsils, that's nearly 2/3, have seen an increase in the frequency of heavy rainfall days over the last decade compared to the previous 3 decades. That means we have already entered a world where our cities are faced with non-linear climate risks. Means what was an extreme event yesterday is becoming more and more normal today. This is what we are already encountering, and we have to understand that as we build and plan for new cities, we have to plan for a very different climatic environment in which we live in. That being said, we are compounding this with many of the things that your reporter mentioned in his report. Rapid urbanization. In Delhi alone, the built-up area has gone up by 35% over the last 15 years. We have built in Gurugram or in Delhi, we've built over natural drainage areas, we've built over water bodies, etc. So you're preventing the water from seeping into the ground. What is called, we have to create sponge city. And if we build over it, if you concretize it, you're not going to be able to do that. Second problem is that you have inadequate drainage infrastructure. The drainage infrastructure is built for average rainfall intensity of 12 to 20 millimeters per hour. Now, that is very different from these intense rainfall patterns that we're repeatedly identifying and have pointed out through our reports at CEW. And then you have the mix of the sewage drains and the floodwater drains, which when they're clogged up, again, because of our negligence, not just as governments, but as citizens, then you have a backflow both of the stormwater as well as the sewage. So what we are seeing is tragic, terrible, but also entirely predictable.
Let me bring in Vivek Menon. Vivek, the question is it too late now? You built this Millennium City in Gurugram. We've seen the same with the IT city in Bengaluru. You build these large concrete structures. You take away from water bodies. Do you believe it's too late now to fix the problem, particularly of drainage, when you're building on areas which were once water bodies?
Well, actually, I don't think so. I think it's never too late to start the planning process or to at least change the design narrative that we have today. I mean, I've been designing, urban infrastructure across the world, especially in the United States, for the past 25 to 30 years. And I lived in Houston for the longest time, and we have, significant amount of rainfall as well as, hurricanes that come through there. The bottom line is that, unfortunately, our infrastructure planned by our agencies, these agencies that are responsible for maintaining both the primary, secondary, and tertiary systems, have absolutely no intellectual capabilities within themselves. I see that in Bangalore over here, we've got several agencies, and we've got one too many, I believe, and none of them takes responsibility for how all of this is planned. My previous speaker just mentioned that. Bangalore, we estimate about 40 to 55 mm of rainfall per hour. Now, of course, Kerala, I design projects in Kerala where we usually extrapolate that to about 70 to 90 mm per hour. And everything is designed around that. So the storm drain systems that are designed around the roads are typically designed to ensure that we can actually absorb the water. The road is the secondary drainage structure, if you will, but the primary drainage structure has to be designed with roadside drains with adequate capacity actually for the water to enter the drainage system. And that is non-existent. I see road after road, highway after highway being built without a storm drain system that can actually absorb the water. The ponding height and the ponding width which we model, and there are enough of modeling softwares out there that can be used to basically model this entire thing to where the water actually drains off of the roads within 5 to 7 minutes. And then, of course, it connects back to a secondary drainage system and a tertiary drainage system.
Are you saying, Vivek, are you saying this is possible if you had experts? You see, you have urban civic bodies with no real expertise focused only on drainage. Are you saying, for example, every major city now needs almost like a ministry of drainage, which only singularly handles this right through the year and then can be held accountable? Today, I don't know in Gurugram who to hold accountable.
Yeah, absolutely, Rajdeep. And let me compare this with what we do in the US. There we have what we call a flood control district. In addition to that, we have FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that creates flood maps, and these flood maps are updated on a year-to-year basis. So you know that if it's a 100-year flood that you're looking at, or probably even today a 200 to 300-year flood, these maps are constantly updated to ensure that if any construction happens within these zones, then there are two things that you need to do. One is you need to provide detention within your own project. You cannot release the storm water that you've created due to what we call as impervious cover. When you put concrete over a surface, you're preventing the water from actually seeping in, infiltrating into the ground. And that's called impervious cover, which creates sheet flow. The sheet flow that comes off of it is what you're seeing on the roads currently. And if you can manage that sheet flow within your own project, if you have a 100-acre project, it's very easy to calculate the amount of detention that you need to provide. So you're not releasing the flood waters from your project into the government storm drains. And that then creates the capacity within the drains to basically drain off into a primary drain and probably into an outfall. When I look at Gurugram, when I look at, the Yamuna that flows not too far away from all of that, right? I mean, in Noida, you have the Yamuna that flows there. If you can outfall into the Yamuna, and I'm in fact actually doing two projects in Indirapuram, and we calculate all of this, we make sure that none of these, private developments actually flood. So it's actually engineering. It's pure and simple engineering. And if you can do that the right way, I mean, I do this on project to project. I do it in Kerala where, the rainfall is 2,300 mm per year and the intensities are in the range of 80 to 100 mm per hour. And we have flood-free communities. So it's not that you cannot do it, but unfortunately, none of the agencies today have urban planners. None of these agencies have a flood control district which controls the flooding and looks at specifically only flooding, detention, retention. So I think, unfortunately, what's happening is, obviously urban growth has created, compounded the problem of flooding, but there is no one who's actually taking that bull by the horns and addressing it. Even a city like Mumbai, which is at sea level, you can prevent flooding over there. If you create drainage tunnels and make sure that you detain the water, you can actually prevent flooding and you can keep the roads dry. So it is highly possible. It's pure engineering. That's about all it takes.
Vivek, okay, let me leave it there. I have run out of time, but I appreciate both of you joining us. Arunabha, we'll get you again, but bottom line is I think both Arunabha and Vivek are pointing out the nature of the crisis. The crisis has now reached a proportion where the buck simply can't be passed on to the citizens, certainly not, and not to developers, but the entire system which is headed by officials who are simply unaccountable in this country. Gurugram 1 year, Bengaluru the next. The so-called cities of the future are rapidly becoming sinking cities. Forget about smart cities. These are becoming sinking cities. Let's move to another city that's making the headlines, Mumbai. Because for the last few days, Mumbai has been in turmoil, not for any other reason, but the Maratha reservation activists who've swarmed across the city. Well, today, some kind of a solution appeared to be found, with the Maharashtra government almost conceding to the demand of the reservationists, saying that they will give them Kunbi OBC status. The leader of the Maratha agitation, Manoj Jarange Patil, has called off his agitation for now, but the question remains, why was this agitation allowed in the first place to reach boiling point? Take a look.
Mumbai's Azad Maidan erupted in celebration on Tuesday evening as Maratha quota activist Manoj Jarange Patil ended his hunger strike on the fifth day. Jarange Patil accepted the Maharashtra government's draft resolution on the implementation of Maratha quota on the basis of Hyderabad Gazette. Once implemented, it will grant Kumbi status to all Marathas from Marathwada region. Out of Jarange Patil's 8 demands, 6 were accepted. He welcomed the resolution, calling it a victory. He also announced that protesters would vacate Azad Maidan once the government issues the official order.
मराठा विजय झाला आज विजय झाला सुखी झाला
In 1918, Hyderabad Gazette, issued by the Nizam-era government, documents several communities, including many from the Maratha community, in what is now Marathwada as Kunbis, a recognized OBC category in Maharashtra. Historically, the Maratha community held a strong presence in the Hyderabad state with representation in both administration and employment. The Nizam's government officially categorized Marathas as Kunbis, granting them reservation benefits in education and jobs through a formal order. The Gazette formally documents that the Maratha community has historically been socially and educationally backward. This is why Manoj Jarange Patil is not only demanding implementation of the Hyderabad Gazette, but also recognition of similar records from the Satara and Bombay Gazettes. While the government has agreed to implement the Hyderabad Gazette immediately, it has asked for a month's time to process the Satara and Pune Aundh Gazette, citing legal hurdles. Additionally, the government has agreed to withdraw all pending cases filed against Maratha protesters during the agitations of 2023 and 2024.
देखिए, मैं हमेशा ये मानता हूँ कि आप राजनीति में हो तो कभी लोग आपको दुआ देते, कभी आपको लोग गाली देते, कभी आपको माला पहनाते, कभी आपको पत्थर भी मारते, लेकिन मैंने पहले दिन से भूमिका रखी कि हम लोग कहीं पर भी मराठा और ओबीसी ऐसा विवाद नहीं होने देंगे.
The demand for quota isn't without controversy. Some believe a faction within the current Maharashtra government supports Jarange Patil's movement and is actively pushing for Maratha reservation. On the other hand, some OBC leaders within the NDA are opposed to Maratha quota.
हम लोगों के ऊपर अन्याय ना हो, नहीं तो हमारे ओबीसी भी जो है अलग घटक जो है वो कोई भी उपोषण कर रहा है, जो मोर्चे निकाल रहा है, और हम भी अभी उसी भी रास्ते पे जो है बिल्कुल शांति के साथ हम अपना विरोध जो है गवर्नमेंट और लोगों के सामने प्रदर्शित करेंगे.
Minister Chhagan Bhujbal has objected to including Marathas in the OBC quota. While the truce marks the end of Jarange's hunger strike, the reservation battle is far from over. The existing 10% quota for Kunbis is already under challenge in courts. Bureau Report, India Today.
We'll wait and see how that agitation eventually plays out. Let's turn, though, to another top story. The Delhi High Court today denied bail yet again to Umar, Khalid and Sharjeel, Imam, among others, activists who've been accused of being part of the larger conspiracy in the 2020 Delhi riots case. Remember, Umar and Sharjeel have spent as many as 5 years in jail already. The trial also hasn't begun. Several witnesses have not even been questioned yet. Despite that, the court said that because of the nature of the charges against them, they could not be granted bail. Anisha Mathur tells us exactly what the court said while denying them bail yet again.
It has been 5 years in jail for Umar, Khalid, Sharjeel, Imam and the others accused in the larger conspiracy to commit terrorist activity in the 2020 Northeast Delhi riots case. The Delhi High Court once again denying bail to all 9 accused, and there are some specific points that the court has made regarding the allegations against each accused. But for a larger view of the court, first of all, the court has said that the right to protest is not absolute. The court, in fact, saying that they cannot be granted parity to the 2021 verdict in the Devangana Kalita case, where the same High Court had said that protest is not terrorism. Here, the court is saying that conspiracy to violence under the garb of protests cannot be permitted. Secondly, the court has said that the grant of bail on sole ground of delay in the trial or long incarceration is not a universally applicable rule in all cases. Thirdly, what the court has said is that the court's discretion in cases like these under the UAPA is already circumscribed, and therefore the court only needs to look at the prima facie evidence and reasonable grounds to believe the evidence. And therefore the court has taken note of the prosecution's allegations and the fact that protected witnesses are yet to be examined, that there are specific allegations against each of these accused in the larger conspiracy case. The Delhi High Court saying no bail will be granted at this stage.
Okay, Anisha Mathur there reporting on that case. The big political story, it's all about slogans, now it's about slurs. Today the Prime Minister back in the country claimed that the Congress party was responsible for the abuse which had been hurled on him and his mother. Mr. Modi got emotional and said that this was a painful insult to every mother in the country and wanted an apology from the opposition in Bihar. The opposition, for its part, claims that the Prime Minister is working to a toolkit to gather sympathy. Listen in to both sides.
कुछ समय पहले 100 साल की उम्र पूरी करके वो हम सबको छोड़ के चली गई। मेरी उस मां को, जिसका राजनीति से कोई लेना देना नहीं, जिसका शरीर भी अब नहीं है, मेरी उस मां को आरजेडी कांग्रेस के मंच से भद्दी भद्दी गालियां दी गई। माताएं बहनें, मैं देख रहा हूं आपके चेहरे, आपको भी कितना दर्द हुआ होगा। मैं देख रहा हूं कुछ माताओं के आंख में आंसू मुझे नजर आ रहे हैं। ये बहुत ही दुख देने वाला है, कष्ट देने वाला है, पीड़ा देने वाला है। क्या गुना, उस मां का क्या गुना जैसे भद्दी गालियां सुना दी जाए।
The program of that stage had ended much before. And I told you the very same day that this toolkit of the BJP is out. They will first create an issue they will first make an issue and then amplify the issue. And then the Prime Minister will make an entry and start crying, oh look, I have been abused again, I have been abused again. This toolkit does not work again and again. No leader or worker of any political party, be it the BJP, be it any other party, or Congress of course, will ever insult anybody's mother. But the Prime Minister, by saying he is non-biological, I think that was an insult to his mother and it was uncalled for. Why should he have insulted his mother?
Okay, let's turn to the big international story. A day after the Tianjin Tango, the Tianjin Troika of Prime Minister Modi, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping, today the United States once again doubled down on its attacks on India, led by Peter Navarro, White House trade advisor, who claimed that Putin and Xi were biggest authoritarian dictators, and he was surprised that India's leadership had chosen to do a photo op with them, calling it shameful to see the country aligning with the likes of Putin and Xi. What exactly, therefore, is America up to, and how does it see the meeting of Xi, Modi and Putin? I spoke to a leading voice from Washington a short while ago. Listen in.
It was a shame to see Modi getting in bed as the leader of the biggest democracy in the world with the two biggest authoritarian dictators in the world, in Putin and Xi Jinping. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure what he's thinking, particularly since India has been in a Cold War and sometimes a hot war with China for decades.
So what next then in Donald Trump's ever-escalating war on tariffs against India? How should New Delhi now respond? My guest is from Washington, D.C., a special one. Harry Broadman is former chief of staff of George W. Bush's Council of Economic Advisors, also served in the Clinton administration as an assistant trade representative, knows a thing or two about trade talks. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Broadman. You're joining us at a time when every day there is an ever-escalating attack from the Trump administration. If not the president, then his trade advisor, Mr. Navarro, targeting India time and again. Make sense of this for us, because from an Indian perspective, all we are seeing is America playing the role of big bully and thereby appending 25 years of a relatively strong, stable relationship between the two democracies.
Well, India, unfortunately, is in good company because there are other countries that the president is being quite aggressive with. And I think, the most important thing is to understand, what his motives are, and for him to understand, what your motives are. And I think, these are two great democracies and very large countries. Obviously, India much larger than ours by population. It's a pity that things stand where they are, but my guess is that we will figure out a way of navigating this path together, because I think the U.S. needs India and India needs the U.S. This is always sometimes the case at the beginning of negotiations with Mr. Trump. I think when he finally sort of calms down and listens to what the proposals are back and forth, I think, there probably will be a deal, but it's going to be rough going. But as I say, if there's any consolation, it's that he's been equally tough with other countries like India.
But Mr. Broadman, is there a rational explanation for what Donald Trump and Mr. Navarro are doing? Mr. Navarro in particular, very, very direct attacks on India day after day. I mean, is this some sort of arm twisting to get the two sides on the negotiating table, or is there something that now goes well beyond that, and can it be explained at all?
Again, you're not alone. I think I think don't get dismayed, and don't respond to his attacks, then you're just feeding the beast. I think important trade relationship, and I think both sides with cool heads, will navigate this. I think as I say, this is part of Mr. Trump's way of doing business. I think I grew up in New York. I watched him as I grew up, so I'm used to seeing this kind of conduct, and I think cooler heads will prevail. I think we have the U.S. has a lot to gain by improving our trade relationship with India, just as India has a lot to gain improving its trade relationship with the U.S.
You're saying that cooler heads will prevail, but just look at the way Donald Trump is dealing with India, let's say, compared to a China. He's given enormous amount of flexibility to the Chinese during trade talks, given one extension after the other. He struck deals with the EU. With India, on the other hand, he seems to get up the rhetoric day after day. So could this spiral out of control, or do you remain quietly confident that eventually Mr. Trump will calm down and we'll have a trade deal by the end of the year?
Oh, I think there will be a deal, whether it's ultimately, the kind of deal that Mr. Modi wants or the kind of deal that Mr. Trump wants. I think that's to be determined. But I think, there's an expression, don't feed the beast. And Mr. Trump's, as I say, his conduct is to make it very personal. It's not just with respect to Mr. Modi, but other leaders. And I think, don't take the bait in some sense. I do think he is reacting, to the recent meeting with Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi and others. I think that sort of riles him. But again, I think don't try to rise above that, as I think Mr. Modi is capable of doing.
But with due respect, Mr. Broadman, why should the Prime Minister meeting Putin or Xi rile Mr. Trump? It was Mr. Trump, after all, who just a few days ago was meeting Mr. Putin for the Alaska summit. When we look at China, it's America's attitude replete with double standards. The fact is China is the biggest importer of Russian oil, and yet India gets singled out and is accused of fueling the Russian war machine. So are these double standards that we simply have to live with if the American president is going to tell us who we should meet and who we should not?
I think so, but again, I think Mr. Modi should keep his calm, which I think he has the capability of doing. It should have been no surprise to Mr. Trump or those of us in the U.S. who are quite familiar with India and China and Russia that this Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting involved them all. And, again, I think if we can stick to the basics, both the U.S. and India, I think there is a deal to be done. One of the things that I think gets in his craw is the fact that we are running a trade deficit with India. Now, to an economist, the trade deficit is part of doing business. It just reveals comparative advantage between different countries on different goods and services. I'm not sure that Mr. Trump fully appreciates these, I wouldn't even call them subtleties, but stark reminders of the strength that India has in the world market. Mm-hmm. And I think, I suspect that when tempers calm down on Mr. Trump's side, we'll find a way through. You referenced his meeting with Mr. Putin in Alaska. I don't think that meeting went very well for Mr. Trump because he didn't get what he thought he was going to get. And there's obviously, as people know from reading the newspapers or watching TV about Mr. Trump's relationship with Mr. Putin, things are not as pretty as Mr. Trump sees in the beginning. And so again, if there's any consolation, India and Mr. Modi are not.
That's Harry Broadman there telling us stay calm is the best way to deal with Donald Trump. We'll wait and see. We started the show today with flood fury across North India. Let's end with it. Get Real India today comes from Himachal Pradesh, where the Kullu-Manali highway has been cut off from the rest of the country. Worst hit in the process are the famed apple growers of Manali. Asim Bassi has tonight's Get Real India story.
Cloudbursts, flash floods, landslides, relentless rains over the past weeks have damaged the Kullu-Manali National Highway at multiple locations. With roads broken and no transportation available, the apple industry is feeling the pinch. In the orchards, farmers have stopped plucking apples.
ये तो 15 अगस्त के आसपास तक सर निकल जाता था, लेकिन इस वजह से क्योंकि मौसम के कारण ये लेट हो गया और दूसरा रोड के कारण ये लेट हो गया, इसके कारण ये नेचुरली गिरता ही जा रहा है। अब गिरेगा और नुकसान होगा सर, इसका बहुत ज्यादा नुकसान होगा इसके कारण।
At a nearby storehouse, apples are packed and ready, but there is nowhere to go as buyers are staying away.
माल पैक करके जहाँ पे रह रहे हैं रोड की वजह से जा नहीं पा रहे आगे को, ये जा रही दिक्कत बस।
तो नहीं तो इस वक्त तक वैसे निकल जाता है माल?
इस वक्त कम से कम हम लोग को 2-3 दिन में एक गाड़ी 2 गाड़ी बन जाता था। 10 दिन से हम लोग को कुछ काम ही नहीं हो रहा है, बस ऐसे बैठे पड़े।
क्योंकि हाईवे टूटा हुआ है,
रोड काफी खराब पड़ा है यहाँ पे बारिश की वजह से।
Apples are a 6,000 crore industry in Himachal Pradesh. The Kullu-Manali region is a major contributor. Small farmers who are heavily dependent on this industry, are in pain.
इस बार रोड्स के कारण बहुत बड़ा नुकसान इस इंडस्ट्री को हुआ है। बाढ़ 2023 में भी बाढ़ आई थी, पर वो 9 से 10 जुलाई में आई थी। उस टाइम तब तक रोड रिस्टोर हो गए थे। जो एप्पल को तैयार करने की कॉस्ट हमारी आती है पर केजी 25 से 30 रुपए पर किलो आती है, और पूरे साल किसानों की पूरी मेहनत होती है, जो कि मंडी में अब 20 रुपए किलो भी नहीं बिक पा रहा है।
The orchard owners are demanding the intervention of both state and central governments to compensate apple growers.
Kullu, Manali, which has around 350 or to 400 crores of apple business, this is all getting destroyed because there is no transportation, no highway and no connectivity. The apple from here is very ripe and goes all over the country. But now this is stuck here, bringing losses to the apple growers. From Manali with camera person Gunjit, this is Asim Basi, India Today.
As I said, this is a climate emergency the country is facing. And my simple thought that I leave you with, how often do we even discuss this? Whether it's in parliament, in cabinet meetings, or indeed on news TV. Wake up call after wake up call. The country is facing, my friends, a climate emergency. Wake up and smell the rain. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri. Jai Hind, Namaskar.